Hello, everybody. Let's talk about the best 434 battle points you will ever spend, and that is the Mechbuster. Welcome to my channel, Lords of Iron, everybody. My name is Preston Poulter. I make comic books. I've been pretty busy lately because convention season's starting to get back. My trade paperback came in, 144 interior pages, gorgeous art. That thing's been selling. I've been having to fulfill my Kickstarter, but I've been using the downtime to read up on the rulebook. So I'm here to take you through aerospace combat air-to-ground attacks. From what I've been seeing, listen to Wargamer Fritz and stuff, combined arms is really all the rage. People love, like, for instance, let's throw in the infantry. Okay, fine. Well, there really should be a big discussion about aerospace fighters because, well, Battletech is supposed to be more or less World War II-ish type of battles, and air superiority, very important in World War II. So why are we leaving that out? Let's put it in. Now, I will say the rules are pretty complex. Fortunately, I read through them. I'm here to digest them for you. Let me first start off by saying strategic operations makes it easier. Let's go over that. In strategic operations, it's easy peasy, all right? Your aerospace fighters are a unit just like any of your other battle mechs. When it's your turn to take initiative, you can go, oh, I'm going to have my aerospace fighter move, or I'm going to have my Stinger move, or whatever. It's just like any other unit. So under the strategic operation rules, you got your radar map. Aerospace units with a safe thrust of less than 10, which is damn near all of them, and certainly includes the Mechbuster, are going to move one area, one abstract area on this radar map every turn, and you can't just park there in the game space. The center area of this radar map is supposed to represent the game space, and you can't just park your fighter there and just be like, I'm going to strike every turn. They don't allow that. You have to move at least one area, and for the most part, all your aerospace units are going to be moving one and only one area. So you can go, oh, I'm going to leave from here and I'm going to go there, and then next turn you can come back. This is an important concept in terms of air to ground. The side of the map that you are flying in from is how you must trace your flight path, and you can trace it any way you want, but it has to be along that direction, and then you can go, oh, I'm going to shoot that mech. Now, if we imagine, just for the purpose of illustration, let's have, say, a Hunchback versus a Mechbuster, Battle of the AC20s. Well, it's going to go kind of poorly for the Hunchback. We'll go over why in a minute. But one, you can imagine if this is just a one-on-one duel, if you're the Hunchback pilot, you can always kind of be facing in the direction of where that fighter is going to be coming in because oh, it's over there. All I have to do is face in that direction, and it has to come in because it can only move one of these abstract units per turn. So you know where it's going to come from. You face it. Okay, it's not going to shoot you in the back. Unlike Total Warfare. Now, let's get into this. Now, Total Warfare rules are a little more complex, but they're certainly more rewarding for the aerospace pilot, and let's go over why. For one thing, under Total War, all the ground units have to go first. So all your aerospace units automatically have one initiative. Of course, this is bad in terms of the initiative game of now you have fewer initiatives to fool around with during the ground game. Oh well. Under Total War, all aerospace units move after all ground units. So that's the first change from the suggested optional rules in strategic operations. What's the next big change? The next one is, all right, each hex that they come up with on the map represents one map sheet. It's fairly simple for a fighter to be maintaining a velocity of, say, twice its safe thrust. So the Mechbuster has a safe thrust of 5, so it could be cruising around at 10 map sheets per turn, which is moving. I actually recommend a velocity of around 8. So I'm going to go over why here in a minute, but let's say, okay, you're going at a velocity of 8. At the start of every turn, under Total Warfare rules, first, your velocity gets cut in half because of all the air resistance, unless you pay thrust points to move it back up. So if you were 8, it's going to go to 4 because it's cut by half. Rounded down, by the way, so if it was 9, you could also spend 4 thrust points to keep moving at 9. So you're moving at a velocity of 8, your safe thrust rating is 5. So far, so good. You spend 4 thrust points to maintain your speed of 8, and 1 thrust point to move up an altitude. Why up an altitude? Because you're probably going to be striking every turn, and when you strike, it's going to cost you an altitude under the Total Warfare rules for what striking does, which, by the way, should be the same under strategic operations, because the manner in which you're attacking, you're still going to be referencing the Total Warfare striking rules. Now, one question I had is, can you be striking at an altitude of 6 because making that attack costs you an altitude, and striking says you have to be doing it at an altitude of 5? So I think you can be striking at 6, losing an altitude, and coming in at 5. I think that's legal. Otherwise, you'd be having to come in at 5 and lose an altitude to go to 4. You want to have the highest altitude you can, because for all the ground units that are firing back at you, check it out. The range, say, of the target is 1. So from that target hex, it's 1 to the aerospace fighter, because you're in the same hex, plus double your altitude. So if you're at an altitude of 5, then you're at 11 hexes effectively, which means you're out of range for all the short stuff. That AC20 ain't hitting you. Neither are the medium lasers. The large lasers and all of those AC10s, that's going to be at long range. Now, in terms of the aerospace fighter firing back, it doesn't worry about range. These are aerospace weapons. They're supposed to go a long way. Instead, it's your gunnery skill, so let's assume a 4, unless you're clan. Plus 2 for making a striking attack, so a 6, plus whatever the terrain and movement of the mech happens to be. Not bad. Meaning if that mech didn't move, you're going to be shooting it in the back with an AC20 with 6 to hit. That's a pretty good investment of 434 points. Meanwhile, like if you're fighting a hunchback, what's the hunchback going to do to you? It can't hit. You're at 11 hexes of effective range, just coming in going, here's an AC20, take another one. It has 5 shots. Honestly, I'm thinking, man, maybe we could strip some armor off this thing and put 10 shots on it. I mean, it's a pretty effective weapon. And you get to shoot in the back every turn. Here's why. Under Total Warfare, okay, so if you have a velocity of 8, you're going to be spending 4 thrust points to maintain your velocity, plus 1 thrust point to increase your altitude, because you're bleeding off an altitude every time you do a strike. Meanwhile, by the way, never do a maneuver. Maneuvers are a practical joke that no aerospace pilot should ever do. Why? Because that's the way the rules are written. Okay, let's just go over briefly. If you want to do a side slip, which is plus 0 to do, seems like a pretty easy maneuver. Oh, but let's see. What's your piloting skill? 5. Plus 2 for just flying through the air. All atmospheric maneuvers are at plus 2, which means you need a 7. And if you miss that, you lose control of your fighter, and that can be embarrassing. So that's just an easy maneuver. If you want to make a hard maneuver, now what? You need a 9 or a 10 is forget about it. So just 8 hexes worth of movement, meanwhile, and there is a table on page 84 of the Total Warfare rules that gives you how many hexes, and keep in mind, a hex equals a map sheet, how many hexes that fighter needs to move before it can change a hex of facing. And they give an advantage to conventional fighters over aerospace fighters, I guess because they're designed to fly through the air. So a Mechbuster, designed to fly through the air, flying at a speed of 8, can still do a very tight turn. So you can imagine, okay, the mech has to go first. It can face any hex it wants. The hardest is going to be if it's facing the same hex as the Mechbuster fighter is leaving, because then it has to arc all the way around. But at 8 map sheets / hexes worth of movement, it can just do it easily without doing any maneuvers, and then come in at the back, shooting again. So you can. This thing is a terror. Meanwhile, let's say, oh, it gets hit with LRM-20 or something. It's got 16 point of armor in its nose. The wings are 10. It can take an LRM-20 and be like, whatever. This thing, it's the best 434 points you can ever spend. If we're doing combined arms, I'm going all in on the Mechbuster. This has been Preston Poulter with Lords of Iron. Thank you very much for your time. Take care.